This is a really big Sunday for us here at St. John's Cathedral this coming Sunday. We have one of the feasts of the church year. It sort of closes out the Christmas season, and we will also be celebrating the ministry of our Dean, John Ross, and this will be the last Sunday that he is with us in his capacity as Dean, and he will be preaching for the last time, at least as a staff member. So we have a lot of moving pieces going on this weekend. So first, about the feast day itself. Candlemas, or the Feast of the Presentation of our Lord in the temple, or the Feast of the Purification of Mary. Those are all three different ways to refer to the same day. And it all goes back to the Jewish calendar. In the Jewish tradition at Jesus' time, a child would be presented to the temple 40 days following the birth, and the mother, who was considered ritually unclean, would be presented into the temple, and then at that point would be able to fully re-participate in polite society, as it were. So if you count from December 25th, go forward 40 days, you land up on February 2nd. And the date of December 25th, which of course we have no idea if that's anywhere close to the time of year even that Jesus was born, but that date was accepted as Christmas by sometime in the late 4th century. And the Feast of Candlemas followed, or the Feast of the Presentation, followed very quickly. And then by the 6th century, there was already this idea of bringing candles to the church on this day, on the day of the presentation, for blessing. And the idea was that they would have all of the candles they would need for the coming year, they would bless them, and that sort of double entendre. These were items that the church needed. I mean, they had no electricity, so of course they had a very functional purpose, but that idea of Christ as the light of the world, and doing that at the darkest time of the year in Europe, those were all kind of interwoven, and that's how the Feast of the Presentation became known as Candlemas. As a really quick aside, you also probably associate February 2nd with Groundhog Day, and that's not a coincidence. The idea was that if it was cloudy on the Feast of the Presentation, that the seasons had already begun to change. If it was sunny and clear on the Feast of the Presentation on February 2nd, in other words, if a groundhog could see its shadow, that the seasons had not started to turn yet, and so people knew that they were in for another several weeks of winter. So there really is some meteorological teeth to that fable of Groundhog Day, and it was just chosen for the Feast of the Presentation because of the time of year in which that occurred. But all of those things all happen on February 2nd. And it is one of the feasts of the church year, and it sort of marks from Nativity, the Epiphany, the visitation of the wise men, and finally with the presentation of Christ in the temple, it sort of rounds out that Christmas season. So if you have any remaining little Christmas decorations left in your house, that last little bit of Christmas tree, this is traditionally a time to kind of clear all of that out. And as I say, this will also be a time that we are going to be celebrating John Ross's ministry with us, to us, for us, and alongside of us. And it will be indeed a celebration. We will have brass at the 10:30 service and festive hymns. John really wanted to have the service be very respectful of the day that it is, so the choir will be singing a very peppy Epiphany anthem, Brightest and Best of the Sons of the Morning. That's that hymn text that's about Epiphany, but it's done in a really jazzy style. And then also at communion, the choir will be singing Draw Us in the Spirit's Tether, something that we sing fairly often. And the significance of this is actually one of John's very favorite anthems, and he can remember, you may not know, he was a boy chorister in Memphis growing up in an Episcopal church, and he can remember singing this hymn, or this anthem, as a small young chorister. So a little bit of rounding out his ministry in the church as well. And we will have lunch provided for everyone that comes after the service. So we invite you to come at 10:30. The prelude will start a little bit early with the brass. We have lots of celebratory music. The liturgy will have this festive touch with the Feast of the Presentation, special music, and then we will all end with a fellowship lunch in the Great Hall. We hope that you will join us for this very important day in the life of our cathedral.